Awesome. All right. Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, the GYBN Caribbean team. Sarah Gittins, I'm co-founder and steering committee member of the GYBN Caribbean chapter. And I want to, recognize everyone here this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on our sixth session of our GYBN's Caribbean Skill Training program. So what we intend to do with these sessions is throughout the past several months, the given team as well as some of our stakeholders have recognized, different areas where we could support young people in the Caribbean uh, to better shape their skills, to be, better individuals, professionals. So what we intend to do is create a series of sessions which target, various different skills. So some of our earlier sessions have looked at being part of community, volunteering, some sessions on social media management. And of course, today we are having a session on networking, which is a very important skill that one can have throughout their life. So to help us, in this discussion this afternoon, in this session is James Ellsmoor. He's the CEO of Island Innovation. So James Ellsmoor is an award-winning entrepreneur, advisor, writer specializing in innovation for remote island regions. He is the founder and CEO of Island Innovation, which is a global enterprise that connects island and rural communities with international partners to support climate action, regional development, and cross-sector collaboration. He's also co-founder of Solar Head of State, which is an international nonprofit that supports government leadership in renewable energy through high-profile solar installations on public roads. He has supported initiatives, a range of geographic and economic context with a strong focus on small island developing states and not sovereign territories navigating complex and climate finance challenges. James holds a BA in economics and geography from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and a master's in island studies from the University of Highlands in Scotland. He was named postgraduate student of the year across the university's 13 campuses. James, I welcome you to take up the floor.
Thank you so much, Tyrell. And hi, everyone. Good day, good afternoon, depending where you're joining from. I don't have a presentation, was really supposed to be more of a kind of open workshop format. So not sure if people are up for interaction or can turn on their cameras, but if you are able to, it would be great to see you and great to participate because I really wanted just to have a bit of an open conversation. Tyrell gave me this topic of networking, and I had to think a little bit about that first because it's not something I would have naturally given a presentation on necessarily. But when Tyrell asked about that, I thought it was quite interesting when we're talking about a biodiversity focus group. Why should we even talk about networking? Why is that relevant? So I thought um, over the next few minutes, we could kind of divide that up into three different sections. Um, One is really the purpose of why networking and why that can help you in your work. What does network building mean? Second is networking virtually. Obviously, many of these spaces now using Zoom, using online portals, and especially for many of you, I'm not sure where everyone's joining from. Is everyone in Trinidad or you're all over the Caribbean? Where are people joining from? maybe people can go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat actually, so I can have an idea of who is joining from where, because I know that some of you are in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm not sure if you're okay. Zadie's in Grenada, so it's a regional group. So then I think that that virtual component for networking is really critical in the Caribbean region because I don't need to tell you all about the cost of flights and the difficulties in sometimes attending these regional convenings. And so actually being able to leverage that virtual first is really helpful. Oh, I see some familiar names in the chat as well. Great to see. Hi, Jessica. Good to see you here. Okay, Guyana,
Hello.
Grenada. Hey. Good. Okay, so it's a regional focused group. And then thirdly, how to leverage conferences and events and like what that means to kind of turn those events into impact. So those are the three ideas that I wanted to share. And feel free if you have any comments to go ahead and type in the chat or join in. It's supposed to be interactive. And you all have your own experiences to share. Um, I'm not, but I guess before we jump into it, I don't want it to be when we think about networking, you might think about, going to a cocktail reception and working the room. That's not really the approach that I want to take today, although that could be one aspect of networking. I really want this to be a more practical session. So not just how to sell yourself in a tacky networking way, but how to show up, build trust, and then follow up in order to build the impact that you're trying to do in this work. So maybe my first question to you all, if you could use the chat again, is what is one word that you would associate with networking? When we say this word networking, what is the first thing, one word or sentence that comes to mind? And be honest, that's fine. I'm generally coffee, great. Social,
Connection.
connection, talking. You can go to Tyrell. Talking. Okay, so we're quite positive overall. You see social, coffee, connection, talking. Um, And so all of those make sense, conversations. Actually, that's interesting because when I was thinking about um, words that I might have put down on the list, I had my list here, which was awkward, intimidating, fake, and useful were the four that I wrote down. I think, maybe you were all being polite, but I think networking can also be all of those things, right? Definitely it can be awkward. I don't want to pretend it's not. It can also be very useful and very helpful. So it's the whole spectrum of these different things. But I guess in different spaces like your role in the biodiversity or climate space, those connections, those networks, ultimately that's what we're talking about, connections and networks, are really, really important to help get into the rooms of where decisions are being made, and ultimately to get your projects either funded or move forward or policies, whatever it is the outcomes that you're working on, it is very, very important to have those. Um, so I guess, yeah, building on that, one more question for you all to write in the chat. Why are we even having this conversation? What is the point of networking? So you previously wrote, what's one word? And some of you kind of answered this already. What is the point of networking in terms of the work that you're all doing? Or what would you like to achieve maybe by networking? If you want to put something in the chat. Jobs, yeah, great answer, right? Job opportunities, regional connections, career improvement, sharing ideas. Yeah, all great answers. It's about kind of self-improvement or impact of the projects you're involved with. It could also be if you have in the future you already have a job, it's about being able to move that forward or have impact if you actually are applying for a job and you bring a network with, like as an employer myself, one of the things that does actually matter is if someone comes to a job application and shows that they already have a sizable network, that is an asset that they're bringing to the table. It does matter because using someone's network, they can actually get things done in a certain way. And you will know. And I think this phrase probably applies even more so in the Caribbean than it does in other parts of the world. But it's not what you know, it's who you know. You've all heard that phrase, right? It's definitely an important one. And I don't want to be dismissive of knowledge and effort and expertise and all those other things that are obviously important, but the who you know is still also important as well, because it's those relationships that help things move forward. I just saw some other things. John said to create a familiarity that allows persons to see your credibility. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, John. Sadie said, enter new spaces and meet new people that can bring me. Okay, so you're all really thinking of this broadly from a career advancement perspective, which totally um, makes sense. Um, I want to turn the spotlight to Tyrell for a second because he asked me to do this workshop, but actually, he's the master networker. He, he should be doing this workshop, not me. I think we first met before our first Caribbean Climate Justice Leaders Academy, right? Um, and I've seen, you've built up your own network and your own profile from participation to actually running programs like this as well. Um, and also having opportunities to attend different conferences, different events, getting funding to do things to build your own, I guess, career trajectory, Tyrell. Um, and I'm just curious if you have any like one particular moment or connection that helps you move from being a participant to an organizer, or even how did you get your foot in the door to be able to get these different opportunities that you've had?
Yeah, thanks so much, James, again for joining and for opening up the conversation. I always tell the story that given Caribbean was born out of networking. I first engaged with Gibbon way back in 2019 um, during a workshop on something in Brazil and something that I, keep telling individuals that join and engage with the group is to recognize the value of these spaces that you are here. Want to do great work. We all want to change, and to be able to do that, we need to build networks. So I would have attended given in Brazil and recognizing that this was a really awesome community, of course, and I'm going to invoke the word networking a lot. I would have networked a lot with, individuals within given after the fact of the workshop. Of course, that's to keep engaged, uh, to keep in touch. And then the opportunity came up in 2022 to attend COP15 in Montreal. There is where I would have had the opportunity to meet CARICOM. And although, this idea of shopping a Caribbean flavored chapter, given something that came up in many conversations, being there at COP, interacting with CARICOM, hearing their desire to see a Caribbean centered chapter forgiven. It was a light bulb reflector for myself. And also, I'll always give credit to Benita Bernard, who was one of the co-founders of the group. And yeah, in that case, we recognize the value of conversations, the value of speaking. So I use that as as an example of how you can take one moment and truly create change. Because from one conference 3 years ago, now going on to 4 years ago, we were able to create such a beautiful network. So I think that for me is an example networking. And of course, James, you referenced it earlier on. I did participate in the Caribbean Climate Justice Leaders Academy uh, in 2024. I was going to say last year, and then I realized it was in 2024, not last year anymore. And of course, I've networked and, created friends and, built relationships through that experience. Yeah, I hope that was able to, give a flavor.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it is just putting yourself out there, right? I mean, there are a lot of opportunities for youth in to enter these different spaces. They are competitive for sure, but they are out there, and I think that's a lot of it is um, having um, the resilience to keep putting yourself forward for different opportunities that are out there, whether it's, a funding opportunity to go to a COP or some international or regional event, because they do exist and you'll see them. And sometimes you just have to, be in the right WhatsApp group or see the right Instagram story to know about whatever fellowship or opportunity it is. But a lot of the time, those can be really, really valuable. And I think just applying for them. So I'm mentioning this because people are talking about career opportunities. Those can be really great to meet with a cohort of other people and build a network there to build an experience. And also, what I think is really relevant, and I'm saying this obviously as someone from outside the region, but I'm luckily enough to have had the experience of working in the region, and also to learn a lot from people working in the Caribbean, fortunately. But to see that when, many of the institutions are spread over many different countries, sometimes it can be quite difficult to meet with the right people from the relevant institutions. You have the Five Seas based in Belize, you have CARICOM based in Guyana, like thousands of miles away from each other, right? So sometimes it's these spaces, like Tyrell mentioned, the COP in Azerbaijan. You have to go to Azerbaijan on the other side of the world to network with people from the Caribbean, and even not even from other parts of the region, and that can actually be relevant for people from your own country. I remember we had a colleague from St. Vincent, one of the smaller countries, and still it took him going to the other side of the world to meet with one of his own ministers because so what I'm saying is if you're able to get funding opportunities which are really, really valuable, I think, for these careers, to attend any of these conference spaces, that can be super helpful, because you'll get to meet representatives from these regional organizations and obviously international organizations. But also it can be a space where those barriers that sometimes exist at home are broken down a bit. You can walk up to the minister or the director in a way that would be not impossible, but more difficult when you're on the ground. And they're happy to see someone from their own country to have that conversation. So trying to get into those spaces can be really valuable, but you have to fight your way in. That's the reality. They're not always, they are competitive, and you have to be persistent and not be afraid to keep applying. I mean, the program that Tyrell mentioned, I think there were 500 applicants for, right? So they are competitive, and they that takes some time. Um, but I will keep an eye out. Look, we share them on the Island Innovation platform. You can also look for Youngo, share different opportunities as well for COPs. But even on regional, like the Caribbean Development Bank will sometimes post different ones, or other kind of UN agencies will post different ones. I'm sure, Tyrell, you have a list of other places where different opportunities are being shared as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make a quick plug here, James, as you brought up those examples. In a few weeks' time, GYBN Caribbean will be launching a call for our youth diplomacy development course to be done in conjunction with CARICOM, the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So I just wanted to, give a plug to what we will be doing um, in a few weeks as well in that space. Yeah.
Amazing. So you'll post on that on your, well, I guess everyone here will receive that from
Yeah.
you anyway. But another one, just to mention, I'll share in the chat. that is just opened is the Sustainable Ocean Alliance has an Ocean Leaders Fellowship. That's an international one, which is really cool. I think they accept 40 or 50 people every year. And those kind of international ones, I think that comes with funding to attend some international ocean events, and also comes with a lot of training and opportunities to be part of a cohort. So that's another one that's worth checking out. So good to look into these different programs that exist as like entry points, because they all each door opens 10 new doors, but you have to get through one door to open the next one. Um, Okay, what else do I have on my list? I don't know if anyone has any of their own experiences or comments to share here. Give me a second just to
Um,
find. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I could briefly share an experience I had up to this morning. So I'm a photographer, so I do a lot of wildlife stuff, and probably about, let's say, it's probably 2, 3 years ago, I went to this activity they were having close to my home in the mangroves, and ended up in a group chat of a lot of different birders, and group chat ended up being a place where different people from different organizations would be, mingling and talking. And I would share my photos in that chat every now and again. And through that, I seem to have landed an opportunity with I guess you could say a small villa in the neighborhood for I guess they want some of my photos to be used for their rooms, but some of the villas because they're named after birds. So I have a decent amount of pictures, and they want to do I guess a collaboration, or they want to use some of my pictures to, express in a more visual way the names of their cottages.
And I guess in your situation, probably the best way to meet people is through referrals, right? Are you finding that you're able to get referrals to new clients through like recommendations?
Somewhat. It's less for wildlife though. So people would see
Mm.
my work and then think, okay, you take pictures of birds, you take pictures of people. I sometimes do, but that's how it sometimes works. But I haven't gotten to the point where um like magazines or anything have contacted me just yet, but we're hoping on that.
But sometimes you have to proactively ask. It's not
That
about waiting to get them. So if you have someone that you've worked with and it's gone well, that simple question, oh, do you think, and I'm not quite sure what you're looking for in your situation, John. So let's say you're looking for just a client for a bit of income. It might not be wildlife. It might just be that you want to do some, I don't know, photos for whatever reason, and you have a project that goes well. Sometimes the proactive asking is the most important part, right? It seems like basic, but if you've already got that good relationship, that's where the networking comes really well. And sometimes just popping back up every couple of months to that contact and keeping it warm can be a really good way of keeping that conversation going and flowing. Because the in-person recommendation still beats any other way to get referred for that kind of business. And I would imagine that the type of work that you do, there's a lot of trust that's important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. I will look to start asking a little bit more proactively.
Yeah, and you can try it in different ways, but it's not don't feel that it costs anything to ask, And often, if people are happy with your work and they like what you've done, they're very happy to support you. In fact, they want to support a young person who is getting into the business and doing this kind of work. So yeah, they'll often be quite happy to support you. I wanted to also just kind of um, set this idea with networking that we're not just, again, as I said at the start, it's not just about going into the room and working the room. And obviously, in the moment, you can walk up to someone, have a great conversation, get the business card, but it's also about how you follow up about that afterwards. And a strong, useful network is not just charming someone in that one moment, but it's about keeping that conversation for the medium, long term, however long is important. So I'm sure you all have had a useful, important conversation, which you think, oh, this person could be a really good contact for my future career opportunities. How do you follow up with that person in the future? Has anyone got an example of something where you've like met someone and been able to follow up with them?
I saw Kevin that raised his hand. Kevin, correct?
The raise hand was an error, but if anything, maybe I might just add a few pointers to what was
Go
said
ahead.
earlier. When you're trying to sell yourself as well and let people know what you're about, yes, of course, the um asking and the follow-up is very important. But you also have to remember to carry your brand with you. You know, a lot of the times we tend to be a bit timid, but you have to take up that responsibility now and showcase, even in a formal way, you know, what it is your brand is about and so on. And when people ask what you do, or you have the opportunity to showcase what you do, don't be afraid to slip in a little slide, a little something to show I also do X, Y, Z, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, people might be impressed with what you do here today, and then they might be wondering, I wonder if that person also, and they mightn't ask, right? They mightn't say anything, but when you put it out, it's like, well, I'm really impressed with what he does here. So I'm really looking forward to working with this person in XYZ area. And if you go in a less formal setting, you could have your printed, designed apparel or whatever it is. You have to be brave and bold when you're trying to do business and you're trying to really get to others, you know, in terms of advertising and so on, because people won't do it for you. And if you sit down and wait and expect that people will come and ask you, no, they won't. You have to have a certain level of aggression and boldness, you know, not inappropriately. You have to know your setting, you know what group you're going into and how to smartly go about it. So as I said, in a farmer setting, you might probably drop in a slide or two to show, you know, to show all the other things that you do. You might even have to mention it at that point, but they could see it on the screen or whatever as the case may be. In farmer, you might be able to come with a little more stuff, probably give away based on your group. You might be able to give away certain things that also showcase the things that you do and so on and so forth. And giving away also helps people to remember you. So you use something that it might be of value to the group that you go into that they would want to hang on to. And on that thing now, you have a number of like the information and so concerning you. So when they look at it, they remember, yes, I remember this guy, so on and so forth. And that would go a long way in terms of really selling yourself and really building that level of connection.
And if you're wanting to build that connection with someone, let's be honest, you want to make sure, I completely agree with you that you're leaving an impact, but also that you're showing how you can be helpful to this person. It's got to be a two-way street. It's not just that you are kind of extracting what you can get from them, but also how you can be mutually beneficial. So if you're going up to some high-powered CEO or director, they probably have lots of people doing that same thing, you know, trying to. So yeah, you can be memorable, but ultimately you've got to be, you know, not and as you put it out, you've got to be aggressive, but in the right way. It's like pushy, but not too pushy. Um, that's a difficult balance, which you just get by practice, really. But then the follow up is what's really important. So how do you follow up and when do you follow up? The cadence of that is going to come in as really important. And are you just following up and saying, hey, how's it going? That's just kind of annoying, right? Or are you following up and saying, hey, we spoke about mangrove conservation. I saw this really cool project that was um, happening in Grenada. What is your opinion of it? Or have you seen this opportunity? What is your perspective? If you're showing that you actually have a genuine interest, if that's the topic that you're interested in, and an engagement there, that's going to get you a lot further. And that's going to be, and I'm using biodiversity examples because I'm presuming that's where everyone is coming from in this group. Um, that's going to get you further than just something that's really generic and could have been done on ChatGPT, right? That's not going to get you remembered within that. So it's partly getting remembered, but it's partly continuing that. And probably what's going to happen is, the person who you're talking to might think, oh, this is an amazing person, but we don't have any openings right now. They might actually be genuinely interested in you, but the timing's not right. That's often the case, right? So it's not, you might be really lucky and you happen to meet exactly the right person at exactly the right timing when they're recruiting and they need someone who's exactly your profile. But chances are that's not the case, you know? So how do you keep that relationship going into the long run? So that when that opportunity does come up, you're the first person that they think of and they go to, and they don't even need to advertise for that job because they know that it's going to you. That would be in the ideal word, right? Um, I mean, I'll speak from our experience as because, and again, I'm doing this because so many of you have mentioned recruitment. So we recruit at Island Innovation very often, and I will tell you we have had all different reactions from people. Um, I once, obviously we'll get many reactions, we'll get many applications, probably over 200 to 300 applications per job that we post. Um, Often what happens is we will interview 3 or 4 final people, and those final 3 or 4 people are all excellent, but we can only take one of them. So what's happened in several cases is we've gone back to those final candidates 6 months or a year later and said, by the way, we have another opening. Are you available? Because we don't want to go and do a whole process again. And so it's really important that they keep the door open. It's surprising how often you'll have people who have got to almost that final stage and then have unfortunately been rejected because it's not been their moment. I've had people email me saying, you're missing the best opportunity of your life, or you're making the biggest mistake, like reacting really badly, or just simply ignoring the email. And my advice to you would be, that's not the best thing to do. That's for me as someone who's making that decision. It's actually a difficult decision to choose of 5 really good candidates, all of whom I know could be really good, and I've got to choose one. So the chances are that if I see that you react well and that we have a good relationship, we can keep that for the future. I'm talking about being a small organization, obviously. So that relationship point, I'm just saying it can be really useful to keep that in mind, because a lot of the time, timing is the critical thing that is important. And if you know kind of where you want to go, then that can be useful. Okay, Tara, I covered most of the things I have prepared already. I don't know if you had anything else from your side that would be good to discuss or cover.
I saw Kevin. Is there another?
I noticed that he expounded on the aspect of being rejected, but can you expound a little more on some tips that would ensure that you have the highest chance of being accepted? If you fall in that last pool, and you have to be weighed among XYZ others, and you believe in the project, the program, the whatever that you have to sell, what other tips can you give to ensure success there and rather than having to be the one waiting on the back corner.
I will expand on that point, but you're going to be rejected. And you're going to be rejected 9 times for every one time that you get accepted. And that's just life. So I think I realize now you pointed that out that I've mentioned the rejection point several times, whether it's for the fellowships or the job. But the point is not that part of the way that you're successful is by persevering. So actually, the reason that you get accepted is because you have been persistent and applied. Obviously, yes, a good application is critical and it's critical. But my point was that actually we had dozens of good applications. They were all great. That we could have hired any of those and they would have been great. Um, and I'm not saying it was luck. There was other elements that fall into that, but some of it is also timing. So rejection is part of it, and you have to be comfortable with that. And that's why the persistence and just coming back and trying again, keeping a smile on your face, even when it's really, really shitty and you're really, down because you've applied for 10. It's that's part of it, unfortunately. Especially the way that job market is right now, that the positions are really competitive. Um, but um, there are obviously things that you can do to maximize your chances as well. So there are was it you, Kevin, that also mentioned the kind of the personal branding aspect?
Yes, correct.
What did you mean by that? What does that mean for you? Because I think that was a really smart point.
Well, it can be taken in different ways. Again, like I said, it has a lot to do with who your audience is. But you have to wear your personal branding so in some way, shape, or form, or carry and more or less possess your own branding everywhere you go, right? Again, it depends on your audience and what it is that you want to sell. Um, you would brand yourself in different ways. It would be hard to say other than specifying in particular cases, but you have to find some creative way in every particular situation to let people know, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I bring to the table, this is why you should consider me. And you should wear that pride as well when you're going with your personal branding in any particular situation.
And I think what's really critical is to weave a story. So it's not just having a lot of random successes that are, really impressive but seem unconnected, but to tell a consistent narrative and a consistent story that brings all those points together. Because there's a difference between someone coming in and having all these great achievements, but there's not really any obvious link between them versus someone who's shown progression and growth from one step to another and can show. And sometimes that requires a little bit of storytelling. And, actually, most people, if you think about it, you can tell that story. But it's also you making sure with your personal brand that you tell that. And that personal brand doesn't have to be, some fancy website and public thing. It's also just what's you have ready for when you're explaining yourself. So even coming back to networking, someone with a consistent narrative and story is going to remember more clearly. Oh yeah, I remember Tyrell because of as you were saying before, he told that story of progression from A to B to C. That's logical and makes sense. Then, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this. So I think that's a useful thing to bring into networking, CVs, etc. And I will say as well, obviously, sending an application off into the dark is useful. Don't always submit it, but it is still true that having the networking, having the connection helps get your application read. Because now the reality is that most CVs, that initial scan, is being done by AI. No human is looking at that initial scan. And so you need to be able to get your CV past the AI so a human actually looks at it. And sometimes what having that human connection can do is make sure that you're being put into that pool and past it. Because if there are hundreds and hundreds of applications coming in for jobs, of course, there is not a human, even if a human is looking at those, they're spending what, 5 seconds max per application. So there's a lot of ways to consider how to do that. Um, yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, James, so I know you would have asked earlier, but I think that throughout the session you've really hit the nail on the head. So my fellow steering committee, Antia is here, and something that we said repeatedly, in speaking to members of the group and people interested in joining the group is truly understanding the power of, speaking up, the power of being present, power of recognizing, opportunities to create change. Because I think, in this space, in this network, contribute change, but sometimes I feel like, like for young people joining youth groups, for some, sorry if there's like music or background noise.
Right.
But Caribbean neighborhoods, everybody else, really. But yeah, I think sometimes, we are part of groups and we start groups and we don't recognize that, we need to be effective in the spaces that we are. So this is why we are, doing these. We see a lot of potential in everyone here and every joining the group. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but we really want to contribute to, making sure that we assist people to one step further. And as we would have said many times, something that is a central part of GYBN is, of course, COP conferences representing the organization, these spaces that we really want Caribbean young people to be effective in those spaces, recognize how they could create networks not just for the group but also for themselves. We always remind people when we have center, leave the email at the end of the screen, send the email, say you were part of it. That's sometimes something that I do when I go to conferences. Is I do keep everyone's email at James Ellsmoor, but I send a bio of what I do. I send my resume as well, just in case you see it. Like if you have a project, if you want it. So I think we want to encourage people to do. Um, so I see Anthea is here. I don't know if Anthea anything as you were able to join us today. All right.
I just wanted to add quickly to that. I think that obviously the cops are a big moment, and I hope many of you will get the opportunity to attend or similar types of programs. Do check out the link I sent before, because that will give the chance to go to the Our Ocean conference, which also I think is a valuable experience. But obviously those conferences, they're not the destination. I think sometimes we have this idea of like, oh, going to COP is the goal, but actually going to COP should be a tool that you have to build the activism or the work or the impact that you're trying to do. So that's just a step. Like, absolutely, going there, I think, can be a really transformative experience, educational, networking, and just seeing how these things play out on an international stage, and then bringing that home to then apply that knowledge into whatever you're doing. But I just wanted to add that because it's important that going to COP is not the end goal. It's a stage on building whatever it is you want to build in the long run.
Yeah, so thank you very much, James. I don't know if this is the end of the conversation, but thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very a busy person, so we always appreciate when people take time to join us. And I think as young people, it continues to encourage us that we do have support, and sometimes it's as simple as, taking some time to chat. So for everyone here, I would have sent the registration group, sorry, the registration link in the chat, and here probably Tana talking now, which said that she has said always be willing to, put yourself up there, take up space, and yes, nobody will speak for you if you don't have the courage to speak for yourself. But I think phrase that I like is, I think it's courage favors. So sometimes, you have to be, of course, respectfully, but a little bold, a little audacious. So James says Sanders, they're already preparing for the virtual Alliance summit, yes, which is a really great event that I've had the opportunity to
Yeah.
virtually
Yeah.
attend in
That-
past.
That's our free
Portland,
online in September, our free online event in September. We do have an in-person event in April, and we're working on trying to get some youth funding scholarships confirmed for that, but we don't have anything that's announced yet. But if we do, that'll be on our Instagram page. So you never know, in the next couple of weeks or months. I'm hoping we will for that opportunity, because at the last year, the Caribbean Development Bank did sponsor some youth from the region to attend. But obviously, that's to be confirmed. But definitely the virtual events one to keep an eye out. And we do share also from other organizations on our Instagram as well. But yeah, completely agree with what John and Anthea were saying there. Just take up space. Fortune favors the bold. I like that. Thanks very much for having me. It was a pleasure to
Thank
meet
you.
everyone. And
Yes, and the
yeah, thanks
recording,
for organizing, Tyrell.
of course, James, and the recording will be available on YouTube. So I do hope that everyone enjoys the rest of your day, and